Welcome to Behind the Pixel. I'm Rick Ramsey. I am the Education Director for visual arts. But virtual production is something I work with here at Full Sail University. Want to thank our student guests from Full Sail. We really want to give a special thanks to our Florida Film Festival guests. Let me see you guys out there. Excellent. We appreciate you coming out to our campus to take a look at this. Now, we have an illustrious panel of guests here, and I'm going to jump Stephen for a second and just really give the first welcome to Caris Baker, because she is our newest inductee into the Hall of Fame. It's funny. Now, Caris is a senior tech artist with Unity, and it's funny because she was talking a little bit. Culley can never behave. She was talking a little bit about the virtual studio that's being run by Unreal, which of course she hates.
Hey, most Unreal products have Unity under the hood. So
that's right. Like all Windows machines came from the Macintosh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we're not going to get into that.
Xerox Park Alto, my friend.
We also have, to my immediate right, Senior Vice President of Production for HBO, and was one of my students way back in 2003-ish, Stephen Beres.
For a moment, as Rick knows this tradition, whenever we would finish a production meeting and we would invite a new member into the crew on Game of Thrones, we would give a cheer of King in the North. And I think as Caris here is being inducted into His Majesty's Hall of Fame this year, I think it's only fair to do a Queen in the North. Yes, on three. 1, 2, 3.
Queen of the North!
Thank you. Okay.
Do it for the camera. 1, 2, okay. 1, 2, 3.
Queen of the North!
I love this.
Aye.
That's awesome. Right next to Caris is Brody Ramsey, and it is not a mistake. He is my son, but he has been out doing virtual production for just over 2 years now.
2.5, yeah.
2.5 years. Started as a game
True.
development student and graduated from Full Sail here. And then did some film work with Alicia Silverstone and some commercial work.
Yep.
And then ended up doing an internship. Never finished the internship. They hired him before he was done. And he's had an exciting path. And I'll let him get into that a little bit better. And then Culley, who has a shirt that I absolutely have to have. But Culley is his own man. He owns Skulley VFX. And so he has done some amazing work with some amazing artists, music videos. He just showed me a Pepsi spot that is just incredible. That was virtual stuff. So that is something we definitely want to get into and talk about. And I'm going to jump back to Caris because not only is she a new Hall of Fame inductee, but she was just given an award by our veterans.
Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about that?
The president of the Veterans Affairs group at Full Sail found me while I was eating a chicken sandwich in the outside, and presented me with this this dog tag. And we do a lot of work with the military at Unity in the GovTech group, the Digital Twin Accelerate Solutions group. But I'm here in Orlando, just so you know, Unity Orlando. We have an office here now. That's important, I do a lot of work with the government. We do a lot of work with 3-letter agencies I can't tell you about, and space and things like that. And so part of my passion is making sure that we dispel the stigma of working in military simulation. It is the biggest honor I have to be able to protect our men and women in service, because most of our men and women's lives lost happen on U.S. soil, happen during improper training practices. That's just absolutely unacceptable. And using products like Unity, we can create better training practices and save those lives just with the products that we have available, can develop here in Orlando. Because we are the military simulation capital of the world. And I didn't say that, someone else did.
That's very true. Awesome. Well, for those of you who've never seen virtual production in action, we're going to do a little demo for you, but I'm sure you're either here because you've heard about it, or maybe you've seen the infamous Mandalorian behind the scenes that kind of briefed everybody on it. But in a nutshell, the way this works, and the best way to explain it is the environments that you see up here and that we use in virtual production are three-dimensional, meaning that they can react with cameras the same way cameras can work in the real world. And if you've played any kind of video games with a game controller, your joystick often is really rigged to a camera that's inside the game engine. So if you want to pan left or pan right or look up or look down, you're usually moving that around. Well, if you make this camera kind of be the joystick and track its motion and put that into the game engine, then you can get the same effect as if you were actually in there. So if you look at the screen over to my left, you can see the parallaxing effect, where things closest to us move a lot faster than things in the distance. And if you look up on the screen here, you can kind of see sort of a Doctor Strange folding of things and moving of things and shifting as you look around 3D objects. And so that's what makes this technology interesting to work with. And it also allows us some really creative moments to be able to do things that we may not have thought we could have done using practical effects, and even sometimes visual effects. So my first question is, tell us from your position, because all of you represent different approaches to virtual. You know, Brody, you work as a ICVFX, basically supervisor, producer. And then Caris, you come at it a lot from the VR world, from what I understand, which I really would like to get into. Culley has his own business, so he's often having to make decisions as to whether we should do virtual production or whether we should do visual effects or even sometimes traditional effects. And then Steven, as a producer for HBO, and also his entry into HBO was digital conversion, so that is something that's very much related, right?
Absolutely.
And so I'm going to start with you, Stephen. Tell us a little bit about how does your job interface with virtual? What are the decisions that you have to make? What are the considerations you have to make when looking at a production?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And for those few of you who are in my earlier Hall H panel, I will reiterate some of this, so bear with me. But I think, first off, just as a general statement, I think virtual production is as important to filmmaking now as the transition to digital photography was about 2 decades ago. And I think that's because it will power a whole new level of storytelling that was either physically impossible, fiscally impossible, or physics impossible, in that we can go to places that we're either not able to go to. The Mandalorian's a great example. There are different planets with different skies and different terrain and things that we just don't have here on our planet. Or you're able to go to a place that would be so difficult, expensive, unsafe to build and operate in that we can't go there. Now, virtually, we can not just put our camera there, but we can put our talent there, and they are inside of this space like we are now, where we're reacting to it. We're seeing it in real time. We're being lit by all this different material that's being rendered around us. And that really does change the way that we think about a show from the time that we read it in development to the time we're ultimately greenlighting it, and putting it into production. Because no longer do we have to think about flying to Tunisia every time we need to be in Tatooine, or flying, in our case, to Malta every time we need 15 minutes on the beach, or we need to be in Spain for a pickup shot because that's where the Red Keep is, exterior-wise. And so it gives us a flexibility to think about our schedule, to think about where we put things that simply hasn't been available before. And I think anytime there's a technology that's that fundamental, digital photography because it enabled a massive expansion of the base of filmmakers and making things because they weren't paying a quarter of their budget, a half of their budget into the film to just make it. They were able to buy a camera for the price of probably a week's worth of film, and they were able to create things that otherwise wouldn't have been created. This is that same space. This is where we will do things that we've not thought possible before, and because of that, the consumer will enjoy shows that previously weren't possible. And I think that's super exciting. I think that's an inflection point in our industry. And I think as individuals who happen to be at a university, one of only two, but definitely the better of those two, that has this built in, that has our good friends in game design, that has our friends in show production, that has our friends in entertainment business, able to collaborate with us in this space on our projects, and we can graduate from university saying, I don't just know about virtual production, I've done it. And I can tell you there are people who have been in this industry like Culley and I for 60, 70 years. Myself, just fresh out of university, Culley on the 70-year side, that
Working on Renfield was an occupational
aged him
hazard.
significantly, yeah. It's actually a documentary about Culley. That we can't say that. We've been doing this for decades, and we can't say that we came out of university with the knowledge to be at the ground floor level of this. Last thing, I'm doing a Dana round here. Last thing, I had the ability to come into an industry that was just moving, like Rick said, from 35mm film as its primary form of acquisition to digital filmmaking, to digital cameras. That gave me the opportunity to be in a place where I was the person that knew the thing that was about to become the thing that everybody wanted to know. This is that same time for this technology. I think that's really important for you guys to realize that, bring that into yourselves, and understand what that means for the potential in your career, no matter what you want to be. If you want to be a writer or if you want to be a cinematographer and everything in between, that is an important thing to realize and to start to digest what that means for your individual next steps after you leave the house of Gary Jones.
Stephen, take a breath.
That's what it is.
Take a breath. Now, instead of go down the line, because Caris, I want to save you for last, because your interface is going to be different, and it'll probably lead us into some other very interesting questions. So I'm going to jump to the end. Culley, you just mentioned Renfield, Nick Cage movie that you worked on, which, was any of that in virtual production or no?
It was just trailer work.
Oh, just trailer work?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about your company and how you work with clients who need your, specialty in order to produce something. And when do you lead them down the road to virtual production or any other type of visual effects work?
Well, I am the owner of Skulley Effects. We work on movies, TV shows, music videos, pretty much kind of a grab bag depending on what a client brings in or word of mouth brings to my door. We recently worked on a Pepsi spot. Well, not recent, it was 2 years ago, but it was more of an experiment, but it ended up being a very good way to be able to do 5 different spots within one location. We had a team go out and get actual photos in environments that we projected onto geometry, so you had that real look in HDR, and we shot I think 4 spots in 2 days in the same location. We brought in set pieces, changed the background, shot, brought in other set pieces, changed the background, moved the set pieces, so you move the angle of the environment without having to go too far, shot, and then posted and put out a wonderful product. But I personally would love to use virtual production on every shoot that we can, but budget usually gets in the way for a lot of my clients. But it's definitely changing, as Stephen has said, the outlook and the way that you can do things immensely. There is a massive bar of entry, though. So there are ways you can do this literally in your house with a green screen and a small tracking apparatus on a camera. So you can do this without the screen, with a green screen. So there's different levels to get into this, and it comes all the way up to this as well. So it's not something that's not attainable, but it definitely takes a little work to figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. We actually have a green screen version over in the smaller room over there, which is really cool. Brody, you come at this from a different angle. When a client comes to view, they come pretty much for virtual production. So how do you manage that? I know, of course, you and I have always had discussions about how traditional filmmakers approach virtual, and then what is your role to help them get the visuals they actually want?
Right. It's a lot of what Steven said, where it is new ideas and new tools that what people aren't even aware is possible that we can now do. So it could be as simple as what he was saying, they could film 4 spots in one day. Instead of going to 4 different locations over the span of a week, you can do that all in one day. And then optimizing that budget, and there are ways that you could pivot that budget and plotting and producing to make things more efficiently and clean. That was not ever thought possible. And I think it takes a lot of planning, a lot of communication, a lot of thought. But if you can get it right, like, it is by far, I think, one of the best tools that we have.
The big difference is there was months of pre-pro before we ever stepped on set, instead of, hey, we're shooting next week.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, when we opened this studio, and my crew probably loves and hates that we did this, but in the end, I think we all felt it was a good idea. We took on a feature film from top to bottom, and our first 30 days after opening the studio was shooting that feature film. And as the producer, I made the deal with the director. We'll fund 90% of this, so you can throw all your money at talent, but it all has to be in virtual production, which she didn't like at first. And the first week, she absolutely hated it. But after we cut our teeth on it the first week, we were able to speed up. And then by the end of the month, we actually went back and reshot the first week because we were so far ahead of schedule. And we didn't like what we shot the first time. So I think that, it's something that right now there's a lot of education that still has to happen, right? And Caris, you working with Unity, you guys, the one thing in your resume, reading through everything, you're heavily involved in AI, heavily involved in VR. VR is something that this technology really came out of, right? Because instead of putting on goggles to enter the world, we're just taking the world and putting it out here for us. Tell us how, Unity is approaching virtual production, and maybe that's through VR interfaces, because we certainly would love them for our directors and our art directors, kind of thing.
Absolutely. My pleasure. It's really an exciting time to be at Unity because what's that company that Peter Jackson made?
Weta Digital?
Oh yeah, so we have acquired Weta Digital's tool set.
I love those guys.
We love those guys. I am so excited to be able to be associated with Weta. I am a gigantic nerd. And when that acquisition was announced, I lost my mind. I am so excited we lost team members because they were so excited to be working on the Weta tool set that they just left because they wanted to be in the world of film production at Unity. Yeah, they did. Just imagine, you've got Gollum inside of Unity, just troops and troops of elves. And what's incredible about that is because we are actively working on film productions. My favorite example is how we used Unity and virtual reality to improve voice acting on the Lion King movie. Not me personally, but I'm aware my company did. They were asked to create an experience to immerse the voice actors into the Sahara Desert to improve their performance. And how amazing is it to be able to transport someone to another world so they can pretend that they're a big cat? I just think that's the coolest thing ever. There's so much to be said about how much work is being done. And where are my game students, my developers, my artists, my designers in the audience? There you are. You know where you need to be right now. This is an exciting time. The word of the week is convergence. And Rick, you touched on the diversity in my portfolio. And the reason why I have a diverse portfolio is because real-time 3D game engines, as we used to call them, real-time 3D engines are touching every single industry that you can imagine. And film is not any different. We are, the way that you described it so eloquently, transforming the way that we do everything, especially film. And no matter how you do it, if you are able to work with 3D, if you understand the digitization, the transformation of data, and the way that we need to do that, if you understand scanning, if you understand point cloud data, if you understand 4K maps, if you understand tiny maps, and how to manipulate the two, and what are the differences between them. If you can understand pixels, you can understand the future of production in any industry. So I encourage you all to just discover all the different ways that are currently being utilized. There's more than just virtual reality. We use augmented reality, we use virtual production. We're using the term immersive experiences at Unity right now. These immersive experiences is the new buzzword that replaces the confusing two-letter acronyms. And I like it better, personally. So this is an immersive experience. And we don't have to try to draw lines between which of the two acronyms it is. So immersive experiences, and if you are able to understand real-time 3D, you have a place here. You can have your place in the industry that you choose.
Yes, sir.
All right. So keeping in mind, too, that we have a lot of our guests are visiting in connection with the Florida Film Festival, which is...
Florida Film Festival dignitaries, if you will.
Yes, dignitaries, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about your experiences with virtual production. And you can couch and answer that any way you want. I would kind of like to hear, maybe a really successful moment, or maybe one that wasn't successful, but you picked up from it and learned, because we're all basically doing that. Brody and I share notes like on a regular basis, but not just with me, but with my team. So you and us and other studios kind of have this consortium that we deal with. And then in our last session with our students, we talked about, the switch of Game of Thrones production routine to House of the Dragon, which is very much a virtual production. So I'm going to start with you, Stephen.
Sure. Yeah, I think that was something that we, sort of wrestled with starting House of the Dragon, coming from Game of Thrones. And I think, the audience has and continues to have an expectation that House of the Dragon is sort of season 9 quality, if it's season minus 100 story. And so that is important to us. It's an important expectation to meet. But we also have the cost constraints of the first season of a show. And we've always been able to leverage technology to allow us to do that. And I think virtual production was key to that. I also think it's key in many ways to, like you said, Caris, an immersive experience is also, I think, important for the cast of our shows. It is draining to be surrounded in green, 12, 13 hours a day for months at a time. To imagine that there is a whole city of robots attacking us or whatever it is, it's hard. It's hard on talent. It's a drain. It is actually physically uncomfortable to be around that brightness of pure green for a long time. It's uncomfortable in your eyes. Things look the wrong color when you walk outside. It's literally like not a fun place to be. And so probably not producing the best performances or producing those great performances under a lot more pressure, a lot more uncomfortableness than it needs to be. So I think in that, we were able to do things that made the show a little easier on talent. We're certainly doing that right now with Night Country, which is the third installment of the True Detective series in Iceland right now. We're able to work indoors on a virtual stage and not in the middle of the glacier, in the middle of the night with it raining sideways and snow up here. And it's just a different way of working. But I think Culley mentioned it, that the pre-production lead-up time is probably, and it's not like making a video game, as now I know so many video game people through my beautiful family here at Full Sail. It doesn't take months to pre-produce a video game, it takes years. But we have to spend so much more time thinking about what we're going to do in the world of virtual production than we ever have before. Certainly than we have planning visual effects. It is a completely different thing. The visual effect has to be finished, camera ready, before we can start, versus a traditional visual effect just has to be done before we show it to anybody.
It's kind of funny how that came full circle. When you were doing film, you really had to prepare because you didn't want to waste film. Then it became a free-for-all to a certain degree with digital. But then now it's come full circle back where you really have to plan again to get the shot you want.
Well, to be successful. And I think we'll evolve to a place where we have virtual backlots that have a lot of virtual standing sets that are very good, and we can sort of just drop in and start doing that work. That's a big project we have going on at Warner Brothers, is this idea of, can we build a library of standing sets? What's the next, we're 100 years old as of this year. What's the next step in that process? How do we, what does the studio 100 years from now look like? And I think that's largely the notion of the world's greatest catalog of virtual standing sets. Pretty soon you'll be able to go on the Warner Brothers BTS tour. You just put on your VR headset. And it's all in there. Yeah, it's great. We'll still sell you like a Central Perk mug for $26 for sure.
Caris, a shining moment with this technology, or a moment that wasn't so shining and you walked away with just better at it?
I'm not fortunate enough to work as often in film as my panel mates. However, immersive experiences is something I'm very familiar with. And the most important thing is the comfort of the client. And I can only imagine how important it is for the client to be comfortable when the client is your talent. So when my client, who is someone I need to impress or someone that I need to make sure they're okay, a lot of it is regarding making sure someone who has never done an immersive experience before doesn't trip and fall, that they don't get stimulation sickness and fall over, and make sure that they see what they need to see inside the experience so that we can move on to the next phase of production. I think that there's a lot of parallels there. So when we're doing our work, I'm not used to that. We have done a lot with large entertainment parks you may be familiar with that I can't tell you about, but all of them, let's just say all of them, and all over the world. And those high value clients, when we get them into the immersive experience, this one in particular, the virtual reality, to show them what's going on so that they can make sure that they have a successful time. Sometimes, just a little barrier of entry can prevent a successful experience overall. There's a story about how I did the math wrong, and as we know, from a central point, if you get a rotational degree, 1 degree off, it's not so bad, but the further away from that point you get, the larger the problem gets. I had a high-value client inside of virtual reality, and I decided to add some beauty, some excitement. I added all of the CAD data they provided me, the entire span of what we were looking at, not just the central point. Central point was perfect. Everything was totally in line. But the further away they got from that point, the more the inaccuracies became more obvious. And they decided to go look for a specific statue, and they found it, and there was a steel beam going right through his pants.
Oh, no. Perfect.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Nailed it. Hey, but they used my tools to take pictures of it and laugh at it and send it to all their friends.
Excellent. Well, then mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished, really.
That's awesome.
So that didn't go so well.
Brody, what about you?
I'm going to give 2 examples to show the diversity of this. So one is we did a feature film in the past year, and it took us 1 week to film about 50 pages it was almost 50% of the script.
Wow.
And the rest of it was shot on location, but they spent 3 weeks doing it and then 1 week in our studio. And the whole thing was done with driving plates instead of using Unreal technology, which is just a substitute to this. And I think the best example for that is if you've ever seen like the Adam West Batman when they're driving in the boat and they have like a plate behind them.
Yeah.
It's that, but like now we have.
The plate's moving left and the car's moving right.
Yeah.
In that case, though, they're doing,
Yeah.
but that's fine.
But we have different angles of everything, so we could stitch it around and they could film any angle of the car that they wanted to. And we did that in 1 week, so much so that the last day we just got insert shots because we were so good on time. And that to me was so cool, and it's a simple use of the technology that is so basic, but you could do so much with it.
Yeah.
And the other turnaround with that is we did a shoot in Unreal for a fitness company that sells a treadmill. And we synced up the treadmill with Unreal and had paths down this Mars landscape where the treadmill and the workout was working in real time with Unreal and then all that. So they were able to record the workout, do this immersive workout experience, all in camera, all with the treadmill. And if someone took that data, they could do the same workout live with the person that they filmed. So like stuff like that that people could do is really impressive to me, and it really elevates not just the film, but the product you could sell. And there's a lot of really interesting ideas out there. So.
Culley, how you doing?
This
right over there?
60 hertz gives me the heebie-jeebies. Sorry, some people are susceptible to the, these things actually flicker 60 frames a second, so just even
Culley's
the static.
brain works in PAL.
Yeah, no, it's 20, I need 50.
Not a single
I need a
old
sync
school
box,
broadcast
you know.
laugh there, hey? Not one.
So it makes
Where's
me,
Andy? Andy must have left.
it's a little weird, but it makes me a little nauseous to be up here. It's not these guys, well, maybe one.
Get you some Cyclops glasses.
Go a long way for PAL jokes.
So,
Sorry.
I think I had a similar experience. We took a car and we put cameras all over it, and then we brought it in and stitched the cameras, and then we could put anywhere the direction that they wanted to put the camera, we could figure out an angle that was in the car. So that was pretty fun, and being able to use that for multiple scenes. But my experience is heading actually towards a different, I guess what you would call virtual production, and that's humans. We're working on making virtual humans to, be a character in a movie, or background actors, or different things of that nature. The sky's the limit, right? Right now with what's going on, we're literally scanning somebody in LA right now for a specific project that I'm excited to see the results. So. Different aspects of virtual production. This is just one. We have a big wall, but we have virtual environments. You can put in VR, same thing as this, and virtual humans that you'll interact with very soon in a very realistic way with the way AI is coming.
Absolutely. Even in the AI org, for a while were working on procedurally generated humans, specifically for creating synthetic data. We worked with 4K scans. And I had a lot to do in ZBrush, cleaning up those human scan data, removing their hair so we can add, effects hair onto them, and a bunch of exciting things.
I want to get into the shaving synthetic humans
It
department.
was a lot. It was a lot. I was actually shaving synthetic humans.
Isn't that one of the new tools? The hair?
Why Caris is
The
my
hair tool?
favorite person.
All right, well, we're going to open it up to the floor for some questions. The only thing I'm going to ask is if you could please direct your question to one of the panelists. If we said, hey, this is for everybody, it will take us all day to get through one question. So on hand the mic off to Philip here or somebody. There we go. And just raise your hand and they'll bring the mic to you. Thank you, Aaron.
That's on a cord.
I was going to say, how much cord is there? Okay.
It's going to get tangled. Over, under.
That was expertly coiled.
Yes, it was.
Expertly coiled. I would expect nothing
Definitely an
less.
under-over.
Amazing.
An
Not
under-over
expecting anything
technique
less here.
there.
I was really expecting a disaster.
Hi, this is for Mr. Beres and for Skulley Effects. I'm currently a film student. I'm very intentional about trying to create my dreams into a practice and to hopefully be able to have production and have a voice inside the entertainment industry. What suggestions do you have for new students outside of what we've been mashed upon in Hall Week, Hall of Fame Week, like the networking? Don't be scared, get into our faces, get our LinkedIns, get our information. What pragmatic suggestions do you have for research or for diving into how do I actually produce a film? How do I get media, how to get communications, outside of getting to know you guys, which is an amazing experience right now. What suggestions do you have for new students as to the simple steps that are early on that would really make a fundamental change in our lifestyles and our motivations?
Absolutely. You've got the first one, which is be hungry. Your tenacity is a big part of who you are, and it shows, right? So we have, you have the burden of showing us who you are, and us being the collective us. On this other side of this very approachable, divide where, we've got the 10 years and 10 years plus. I would encourage you to tell a story so that you can easily communicate the excellence that you have to share with us, and us being the future employer, us being the film people, the people that you're trying to communicate with, right? Acronym STAR, STAR, situation, task, action, result. If you can communicate a story in a visual medium like a portfolio where you had a complex problem that you were able to tackle, and then show us what happened after you added your excellence onto it, it will help us understand who you are and how you think and how we could apply you to a product or a project.
I'm going to go with, well, at least some of us here are a little older. We try to keep up on new technology, but it is impossible to a certain extent because of how busy we are. So something I would say is use the newest techniques out there, the newest things that are coming out, because you're malleable, you're young, you're hungry. This machine learning AI stuff is insane. Like, I'm looking for people who know that right now, that are deep into it. The school's not teaching that yet. Nobody is. You got to teach yourself. Just all that stuff right now is just, it's exploding. It's going to be here. And you can use it for treatments. You can use it for, it's videos coming next week, tomorrow, 5 minutes. That's how fast these things are changing. That's where you can, everybody can look into and excel in this area that us old guys don't have time for, but we really want to know. We want to find people that are in this, because we need to find people that understand it so that we can understand it and implement it in our projects and our companies.
Thank you.
Hello. This question is more faced towards Steven. I know last year in a Q&A you said that all these big studios are now setting up virtual stages such as this one, but there's a severe lack of people to run them. And as a film student, I was wondering if there were like any specializations or niche jobs, as you were saying, that you could that you would want a film student to sort of gravitate toward in order to fill those positions.
I think it's actually probably a better Brody question than me, because he's very much in it every day. But yeah, I think that being able to go to an employer and say, I have a knowledge of this, I have been active in this space, I have contacts in the game development space, I have contacts in the show production space, and I am able to help you with whatever you need help with, is the right approach to that. I think that's it's, I don't know that it's anything specific, but maybe you know that there's something more specific than I do, but I would say having a knowledge of how all of this stuff interconnects, all of the different technical aspects of it, and then all of the, like we've been saying, production challenges that go along with that. All of the gotchas of, oh, if you do that, this is going to happen. If you put Culley in the middle of it, he's eventually going to get motion sick. Knowing that sort of stuff is super important, because the person that you're standing next to, who might have paid for this space, might not know that, right? And I think that's where you become that person in a line of 3 people that has the answer when the answer is needed, and you elevate above those 2 people standing next to you. And so, I think it's not probably as simple as, or it may be as simple as, a systems administrator with Windows NT. There's a dated
I actually have one very specific one that we talked about yesterday.
There you go.
Color science.
Yeah,
there are not enough color science. There's a whole system here between camera, screen, color correction, files, bit depth, that it's just,
Yeah.
That is one very specific one that I know is highly in need.
Yeah, sRGB to log C is
Yeah.
not a with
ACES.
linear light in between it is not a simple equation to solve.
ACES CG, OCIO, it's a whole thing.
I think the other thing is expectations, or like honestly, like in my opinion, the other half of it. A lot of people aren't new to this, and just setting those expectations and knowing what limitations, but how you can use those limitations to your advantage are like the biggest things in my opinion. So.
Thank you.
You got to know computers.
Those old things.
My question's towards Culley. How used is photogrammetry or scanning in your job or industry?
How do we use it?
How important is it?
How often do you use it? How important is it?
It's hugely important. I mean, to get the most realistic digital human, you would scan them down to the micropixel.
Yeah.
The scanning stages that I know use anywhere from 50 to 280 cameras stationed in a geometric cube or a sphere, not cube, and 4D captured data is one of the highest throughput data sets that I've ever heard of. For 20 minutes, you can have anywhere from 100 to 400 terabytes.
What's the fourth D? Smell?
Time.
Oh, yeah.
Time. 3D plus time.
Right. The fifth D is smell.
So it's not just one snap, right? It's 100, 240 cameras running at 60 frames a second, capturing every nuance and micro expression in your face that can later be pulled into Unity and Ziva and then put out a real performance using performance capture, which they did in Avatar. But I mean, photogrammetry down to humans, down to objects. I believe you can make stuff virtually all you want, but if you can scan them, you're going to have that more realistic data in the end.
I'd like to point out that my first job in the industry was a 3D scanning company who would 3D scan people at conventions and print them out into little 3D printed statues. And it was a small startup, and there's a lot to say about that. But because of my familiarity with voxel sculpting, voxel data cleanup, I then got into the world of litigation imaging from that experience. And litigation imaging is recreating crime scenes for juries to better understand what's going on. And I would receive the minutes of what happened. I would create them a 3D animation, and we would be using 3D scan data. We would be using point cloud data from the actual crime scenes, and I would have to place accurately in the 3D scene. Right? And from that experience on my resume, I was able to leverage that into the engineering world, where we used large capture systems to do 3D 3D capture point cloud data to take the real world, the current, the as-built is what it's called, and then overlay the design intent on top of it, so that the people who were reviewing the construction could say, this is where we are and this is where we need to be. Giant 3D capture spaces.
Yeah, volumetric capture, correct?
Volumetric
Imagine
capture.
being at a concert with your VR helmet on and it's live, it's not happening yet, but it's an emerging technology. They set up a camera system around this performance and you literally could stand on stage and watch the drummer.
Absolutely.
Well, a little delay in the future, but.
Yes, there's a whole another world of live capture entertainment for sports, for concerts that we're doing at Unity, where you are able to interact with the live performance. So imagine rotating with your device around two people punching each other in the face so you can really see the impact, right? You're actually there, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, you see the beads of sweat down their faces. Just absolutely transforming the way that we consume media and live media, live performances and events. And you can only imagine what that's going to do for the film industry as well. I completely forgot about Avatar. Yeah, we worked on a little film called Avatar. Yeah, I think I was at ITSEC, which is a military sim conference, and someone said, oh yeah, we got Avatar coming out. And I go, we didn't work on Avatar. Like, we worked on Avatar. Oh, we worked on Avatar. Okay, all right, that's cool. It's really, really incredible. Just an absolute. I remember seeing the models of the Na'vi. When you clicked on them, you know how when you click on a model, the wireframe turns a color? the entire character was that color. It was so incredibly dense, and it just, you need to be able to have highly performant computers to not only run them, pre-render them, but to run them in real time.
There's a question over here in the far side.
Before he gets that over there, have you guys seen the light field technology displays? Oh,
Welcome to Light Fields.
Yes.
I can't wait. One panel costs $500,000 right now. Yeah, but I want to see a thing like this, and it projects that it's going to be the real hologram.
That's
It's insane.
amazing.
Sorry.
Yeah, hi. I'm one of the film festival patrons.
Hi.
And I want to thank you for sharing this with us. My question is for Full Sail. If I wanted to build one of these in my garage, is there licensing issues that I have to deal with?
Maybe that might.
There you go.
Oh, okay, I'm on Steven's mic. So, you know, this is the beautiful thing right now with this industry. When, you know, the cost, of course, is variable. I think Steven had mentioned, you can do it like this. This facility was in excess of $3.5 million for us to build it. But you can do this in green screen version, and there are a lot of people doing that, and it's very successful. The only difference is your talent's not going to have that immersive experience. But as you can see the camera view on the monitors, you can have that experience in real time. So you can see what you're compositing right on the fly. If you're doing that, then it is considerably less expensive. And your big ticket items are now going to go into your camera and your tracking systems mostly. But when it comes to these environments, they are ridiculously inexpensive right now. And if you're using them in virtual production, they're the same, you know, often these environments are also used in gaming, but now we're seeing more and more environments that are for virtual production. And they could be anywhere from $15 to $250 or $500. And I think the difference is the detail. You know, your polygon counts, how much detail is there in there, how many assets might come into pack. So, you know, how much stuff on the side can you fly in, props-wise, that have been modeled and prepped for you. And I think then we also have different ones that, you know, Caris might be able to speak more to, that are spawning environments where you could say, oh, I want to grow a forest, and you can tell it what kind of trees and how old the trees are going to be and what kind of grass and where is it going to grow thick and where is it going to grow thin and what time of year. Is there going to be snow? Is there not going to be snow? And it'll create that environment for you. And then you just go in and pull out this redwood because there's too many redwoods in here, right? And do that. And those are probably the more expensive ones. But, you know, to answer your question, it can be very cost effective on the low end. And when it comes to environments, super cost effective.
Unity did just acquire SpeedTree.
Speed tree?
SpeedTree.
I just thought that was just a tree.
Procedurally generated trees. So
That's very
procedural generation is the word you're looking
Yeah.
for.
Okay.
And absolutely, yeah, it's
there's-
a crazy world.
There's also some relatively cheap software where you can take a bunch of photos of something and feed it in and get 3D environments back out.
Yeah. And any artist in the world, in the room, I wouldn't be worried about those things taking your job. You need to just know how to use them and make your job easier using those tools.
Yeah.
There's a hand.
Right here.
Yeah, artists get good at procedural generation.
Yeah.
Hi, so my name's Taylor. I'm a film bachelor student, and I am really excited about virtual production. And as Larry Katz said to me the other day, I'm like Cyclops without my glasses on, so it's just everywhere. So my question is basically, what's a good recommendation for more research? Like, where would you start in terms of like understanding kind of, I've heard a lot of phrases like polygons and parallax and all these things. Like, where would you start your research, basically, if you were me?
So you're
Like specifying, I guess.
you're entering in your 3D graphics journey. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, basically. I'm a film student, so
Yes.
like I'm not really learning much about the 3D.
Yeah.
Right.
So where would you
How would
recommend getting research for
Wow.
that?
Okay.
I found, because I am somewhat of a Luddite when it comes to this stuff. My brother is a visual effects supervisor on The Mandalorian, and so anytime I need information on this, I can call him, or I can call Culley, or I can call. But I have to say that the documentary work that Walt Disney does around their shows, especially those shows, The Mandalorian and things like that, that are using virtual production. They actually did an entire episode on stagecraft, which is Industrial Light and Magic's version of this thing. They're sort of, because everything has to have a special brand name at Industrial Light and Magic. That's what makes them ILM. So, but that's just a very basic resource to start understanding at least some of the language. Because to your point, the language is sometimes the barrier.
Yeah.
But then I also think I know, because I know everything that every film student does here when they're not around. Helping Larry and I with our panel tomorrow is a good example of the kind of work that you can do when you're right here on campus. Find your Caris equivalent, there is none, but find a reasonable Caris analog in the games program and get to understand the work that they're doing, because I'll bet you there is some of those folks that are just as interested in the language and things that you're learning, and work with them, if no more than just watch the Disney behind the scenes things with them. Have those conversations. To my earlier point, that is where Full Sail stands apart from maybe any other university. The other university that has one of these is that you have access to the games folks, the show production folks, the entertainment business folks, all of the different disciplines that go into making something like this, and Rick, and Rick's famous son who works in the, and all of these sort of things. So I think that's just the trick, right? Is that, you have the resources to learn that vocabulary, and you may just make a friend that ends up being someone who graduates along with you and gets into, a parallel business that you can complement for your whole career. I still work with a gentleman, Mikey Carr, who was in my class with me, took from Rick, and he runs the front side of my building. He runs a post-production facility in Los Angeles, and I still see him nearly every day, which is pretty weird considering when we met on the first day of Full Sail in our orientation day, and 20 years later we're still together. But yeah, I think that may be the very best thing that you could do. You might be in the best place in the world to be able to cross-pollinate in a really helpful way. You can. It's a good system.
Just to chime in real quick, Unreal and Unity both have really, really great documentation.
Okay.
It's all really there. They even, I know Unreal themselves post almost every quarter they post a full field guide, glossary, all those terms are all on there. They have really good forums that have all that information.
Oh, thank you.
But do they have it in video?
I was going to say.
Not always.
Sorry. I was going to say the same thing as Brody. There are so many tutorials out there right now. And sorry, Caris.
I'm a little overwhelmed by it. I've typed in and I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
Find
it's a lot.
beginning Blender.
Yeah.
Blender for dummies or
Unity.com/learn.
something.
Unity.com. Find that's he's not here, but Kyle, who manages this studio, is one of my best friends. We back and forth stuff all the time, and we're both from the film side, and then we bounce things off with Marcella, who is our tech artist back there, and she comes from the game art school. But I don't want this is definitely a student question, but really, Unreal is free for anybody. So if you want to download it and start working on working with environments and things like that, it's a great idea, and it's not just that, but it's kind of fun, right? Because you can create, and it just gets better and better. All these things, Maya, Blenda, what Unity puts out, what Epic puts out, all these things are starting to converge where they interface just in such beautiful ways that your mind starts spinning off into, well, what if I did this? And so it can be a really fun experience for anybody, really.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely introduce yourself to Marcella. Everybody should on their way out.
Yeah.
Everybody, a loving, deep embrace, please, from each one of you.
Don't place. I need it. We have time for
favorite people.
one more question, I believe. So.
Hey, how are you? I'm Phoebe Elefante. I'm the program manager for our undergraduate game design program. So I'm coming at it from the game side. I was just wondering, I'm going to do a for all of you question because I don't know who to point this to. I'm sorry, Rick.
Because you don't pay attention to the rules, which is what the game design program is all about.
Exactly. Are any of you working with game designers and game developers to create programmatically driven features in your spaces? And if so, what are the specific kinds of skills you want to see from game design students for applying to those kinds of positions?
I'll start and I'll say this because it's A, a plug for my DC3 course, and B, a plug for my DC3 course. I think that, yes, we are absolutely in two places. The programmatic or runtime, as we started calling it for whatever reason. The runtime environments are something that we're working very actively with former or current, I suppose, game developers on. We don't do it as much because we're not quite at the place where a creative walks into a blank canvas and starts matrixing things out in front of them, but we want to get there. Again, with Warner Brothers 200, we should be able to have someone standing in a fully virtual stage and saying, I would like these buildings from Amsterdam on this side, but I would like that one to be blue, and that's certainly something that we can do. We don't have quite that tool set yet, but we will. So I think that's important. Second of all, I think is for film students, like we were just saying, to learn the vocabulary of game design, of programmatic content generation, and vice versa for game design students to understand the visual language trademark of filmmaking. And I think that's really important because the abstract language that we use to Rosetta Stone our way from the nebulous creative conversation we have when we're conceptualizing a show and the very distinct and prescriptive language that we use to then action that into building sets or virtual environments or placing cameras or whatever is the concept we call visual language. And so being able to sort of speak native in each other's tongue, if you will, I think is super important, and I think is something that, again, if you don't know, I'm a fan of Full Sail. There's an opportunity space here that is like no other anywhere in the world, and that although the school doesn't necessarily, I'm working on them, doesn't necessarily require that, you should require it of yourselves. To learn to speak each other's languages, because the world of 3D environment creation and 3D environment capture in the physical space are coming together in a way that there probably won't be a differentiation between the two in a few decades' time, or maybe even less than that. So I think that's the number one thing, is just learn to speak our language, and we'll learn to speak yours.
I have a very, very much shorter answer.
That was my short answer, Culley. The long answer is...
Full score and many Bereses ago, we set out upon a journey.
There's a whole DC3 course behind that answer, so there you go.
Well, I mean, in gaming, you have a lot of stylization, right? The game takes on a very visual language of its own for that purpose of that game from the designers, but in this, we want photorealism. So I'm going to say to your game students and your designers, photorealism. That was very short and sweet.
Photorealists. Unless you don't want that, and then something else. Yeah.
Just to add to that, from my perspective as a game development graduate, you have a new client base. It's film, it's live events, it's immersive experiences. You have a new client, you know what tools you have. I think we can find a way to give it to them, and that's the best way I can put it and describe it that way.
To achieve photorealism, it takes a lot of effort. It's not as it's one of the most difficult things to do. So that's why I say if you can achieve that, you're going to have a leg up.
Thank you. Oh, yes, thank you. All right, well, we have pretty much run out of time. I want to thank our panelists, Stephen, Caris, Brody, and Culley. And definitely our crew that's been working here, Marcella, Jeremy, Sam, a bunch of those guys in the back. And our student help as well, all right? Thank you so much. Hang out if you want, but enjoy the rest of your day.